So we're in your United States history book. We're on section 3 of chapter 29 on President Bill Clinton's administration. So we're all the way up to the 1990s. You can see here's some pictures of the Clintons. You see Hillary, his wife, and here's Bill Gates. Here's the Oval Office. Here's some pictures when he was younger. So we're going to go over the 1990s, what was going on during this time, and also the administration of President Clinton. So let's begin. The election of 1992. Well, President Bush's popularity was declining. President Bush and Vice President Quayle sought a platform, though, on traditional values, free enterprise, patriotism, and military policies in the Persian Gulf War. But the Democratic Party at this time nominated Governor of Arkansas, Bill Clinton. He was born in 1946, and his vice president candidate running with him would be Senator Al Gore, a senator from Tennessee. The Democrats did exaggerate the economic crisis, and they ran a platform of abortion and also increased social welfare. So you can see here, basically this is going to tell you here who wins, but not only that, we're going to see another candidate enters the race, Ross Perot. A lot of people were upset with George H.W. Bush, and him running as he ran on a platform as read my lips, no taxes. And then he went ahead and actually that was discredited, and we went over before. So, and the point of that, they were like, we're not sure about, George Bush this time. So the platform would change because of Ross Perot. So Ross Perot here, and he lived 1930 to 2019. He was from Texas, and he also attracted a significant attention running as a conservative, appealing to many who were dissatisfied with Bush, but they're very wary of Clinton. So he was at the third party. Both Clinton and Perot emphasized the struggling economy, and with the aid of the news media would successfully portray it. With the conservative ticket split between Bush and Perot, Bill Clinton won the popular vote. Only 43% were cast for Clinton, though, but the remaining 57% were split between Bush and Perot. So the Republicans criticized Perot for campaigning against, Bush to compete for the conservative vote, and that way they felt they lost the vote to the Democrats, as Bill Clinton won. Ross Perot was very centered on the economy too at that time, so he was very against how Bush was handling the economy, and so he was a self-proclaimed billionaire, So in the midst of all this, it definitely split the party. So, and anyway, here's a picture. Is the Clintons 43% to Bush 37 to 19%. You see here. You can see how the candidates, the party, the Republican Party, was split there. So that's what happens sometimes, So when you have an independent party that gets a lot of votes from another party. So rumors in the White House, the Clinton and the Whitewater affair. So allegations of wrongdoing plagued President Clinton throughout his administration. One accusation claimed that he had used his position as the governor of Arkansas to grant special illegal favors to a real estate firm called Whitewater. They called it the Whitewater Land Development Company, or Whitewater Affair. So the Whitewater Affair was assigned a special investigator and a congressional hearing. And after 6 years of investigation, an independent counsel determined that the evidence was insufficient enough to convict. So in the midst of this, another Whitewater Affair. So whenever you think of President Clinton, always think of the Whitewater Affair, and it had to do with giving favors to a real estate company, land development company, when he was governor of Arkansas. So here is a picture. This is Deepwater scandal. Clinton accused of arranging illegal loans for Whitewater. So you see here, anyway, taking in fraudulent business practices. So Clintons have had quite a few of these to go through, whether some of them, these accusations, are correct or not, but Whitewater went on for 6 years. So some pictures. Presidential promises. During Clinton's campaign, he made promises to liberal groups such as homosexuals, feminists, radical environmentalists, and others. So here we have, of course, making promises to them. Within days of the inauguration, he issued several executive orders. So one order removed restrictions imposed on abortion. So Clinton also urged Congress to lift the ban on homosexuals in the U.S. military, despite objections in Pentagon that such a move would destroy morale and effectiveness of the armed forces. And Clinton compromised on the issue with the policy Don't Ask, Don't Tell, DADT, call it DADT, which left both sides very dissatisfied. So in the midst of all this whole thing, we have abortion as a foundation that the Clintons took for abortion. Of course, for rights for liberal groups such as homosexuals, feminists, radical environmentalists. They all were underneath the party as coming forth at this time. So here we have the presidential promises of Clinton's. Socialized medicine, Hillary Clinton. So First Lady Hillary Clinton, she was born in 1947, devoted her energies to develop a national health care plan funded by businesses and their employees. So this incorporated socialism as a foundation, bringing in socialism. Conservatives warned that the average person would pay more taxes and become more dependent on the government with socialized medicine. The standard care would decrease, which is the hallmark of socialized medicine, and Hillary Clinton presented this to Congress in 1993 for a mandatory health insurance for all Americans. So Congress debated the issue, opposition grew. By 1994, it was clear that the American people did not support socialized medicine, and Congress rejected the plan. So here's the beginnings of socialized medicine. Later on, we'll see what Obama does with Obamacare, but this is where Hillary Clinton started trying to bring in socialized medicine. I like what it says right here. Basically, the standard of care would decrease, which is a hallmark of socialized medicine. You can look at other countries and see how this happened. When socialized medicine came in, then the standard of care was way less. So here we have socialized medicine is the keystone to the arc of the socialist state. That's what Vladimir Lenin said, who was, a communist. To socialized medicine, controlling doctors and controlling medicine. If the government controls it, then governments are going to control the doctors. They're going to control our medicine, and they're going to control what health care we get, right? That's the problem. Do we want the government controlling or not? So the Supreme Court appointment. Of course, Supreme Court appointments are very important, right? Because the Supreme Court will establish a lot of whether bills go through and become laws, or whether they're constitutional or unconstitutional. So in 1993, President Clinton had an opportunity to nominate a new member of the Supreme Court. So he nominated Ruth Bader Ginsburg. And she lived 1933 to 2020, and this is to fill this empty seat. Ginsburg became the highest ranking Jewish member of the American government, and she helped determine many controversial court cases. So we have Ginsburg, the first highest ranking Jewish member of the Supreme Court. The Republican Revolution and talk radio. So this is important where talk radio actually begins. So the liberal goals of the Clinton administration led to a resurgence of conservative thought. Conservative talk radio was the catalyst. So the media, practically the entire media, had started being controlled by liberals, and the points of, especially when they were filming things to have to do with the Vietnam War. So, but since that time, conservatives, through the time of Ronald Reagan, actually began on radio, and it became, before 1987, it says federal regulations required the media to portray both sides of the political issue equally. But this rule was abolished when Reagan was president. So if you had a talk radio, you could say free speech, what you wanted to say. So this allowed conservatives in the 1990s to dominate talk radio, providing Americans with a different perspective from the left-dominated television and newspaper media. So the liberal basically had dominated television at this time and the media, but now would come talk radio. Rush Limbaugh, he lived 1951 to 2021. He became a pioneer and one of the most influential voices in talk radio, conservative talk radio. His daily radio show set an example for a lot of other hosts. So here's Rush Limbaugh. He says, "Don't you just want to punch Limbaugh?" It says here. And there he is. So of course they would think, oh, what is he going to say? And he definitely had a very conservative and was critical of the liberal politics, so. Republican Revolution. In 1994, the conservative resurgence manifested as Republican Revolution, when the Republicans at midterm election gained a majority in both houses of Congress for the first time since Eisenhower. So although we have a very liberal president as a Democratic liberal as Clinton, now we'd have both houses, the Senate and the House of Congress, the House of Representatives, now gaining a Republican majority. So we have a Democrat president, but we have a Republican Congress. So the new Speaker of the House of Representatives was Newt Gingrich, and he lived 1943. He led the drive for the Contract with America, signed compromise to the people who lowered taxes, reform welfare, and return to more political decisions to state and local levels. Contract with America. I said this is American, but America, contract with America there. And so basically he gave this as a contract to the people in order to lower taxes and to reform the welfare and return politics to the state and local levels. Basically, what that means is basically the central government wouldn't have all the power, the federal government, but the power would go more to the state. And so that was this contract, Republican Revolution, contract with America under Newt Gingrich. So the budget debate. So in 1995, the federal government was running a budget deficit of $165 billion. So meanwhile, the national debt had now risen to $4.9 trillion. So the Republican-led Congress prepared a plan to balance the federal budget by the year 2002. So President Clinton vetoed it because of the cuts in education, but negotiations continued into 1996 then with little progress. So we have here this budget going on. Of course, we have Clinton looking at the budget. And later on, we will see that the budget does get balanced during this time. So with the Republican Congress and with Clinton, we end up, Clinton does balance the federal budget. Is a picture there. So we have this budget debate. Of course, it goes on with each president. Law enforcement issues. Rodney King incident. You probably heard his name before, Rodney King incident. In 1991, Rodney King, a paroled Black American felon, led police officers on a high-speed chase through Los Angeles County, California, before he was detained and brutally beaten by 4 police officers that was recorded it on video. So the media's national broadcasted it, and this outraged so many people. Later, 3 of the 4 officers were acquitted of wrongdoing. So this caused the Los Angeles riots to destroy over 1,000 buildings and caused over 2,000 injuries and 60 deaths. Although some of the officers were found guilty in separate federal and civil cases, the Los Angeles riots demonstrated that race relations were still a big topic. So we have, this is a terribly unfortunate, terrible event on tape of 4 police officers, beating up a man, Rodney King, after they chased him through Los Angeles County, and he wouldn't stop, and chased him, beaten him. But the beating was so brutal that it was horrific, and indeed horrific. They did not need to beat him, that is certain. So the broadcasting this just saw because he's a black man, of course, that he was being treated prejudiciously, which he was. But as we go through this time, it shouldn't have caused 60 other people to die, or 60 deaths. He did not die right after this either. So later on he would. He actually drowned in a swimming pool a few years later. So anyway, but can you imagine? So rioters just started, rioting the stores. You can see here, just throwing things off the counters, going nuts, in certain areas, and, destroying buildings, destroying the streets, ransacking, and hurting people, causing tons of injuries, to different people, and even 60 deaths. 60 people died. Now, did that have to happen from here to there? So definitely we see now there's a big, race relations are still a big topic, especially in Los Angeles and throughout the country at this time. On to the FBI in Waco, Texas, the Waco, Texas incident. In 1990s, the growing extent of government power over the lives and property of American citizens became a national concern, the government having power. On February 1993, the FBI besieged the Branch Davidian, I'd say David was his name, so they called it a Davidian cult. It was a religious cult is what it was. And it was a compound in Waco, Texas. They were just living there communally. And so during the FBI's 7-week siege, that means they surrounded the place for 7 weeks, fire broke out and killed 80 people, including women and children. Many felt that the FBI had overstepped its boundaries. So despite, here it is right here, the whole thing burned down, despite what they had surrounded it and put it on siege and all this, everything that had happened, did they overstep and kill, everyone there, 80 people. And there were women and children that were involved that, into this cult. So you can say, okay, it's a cult and all this, but did they really, could they have done this a different way, is what was put forth. So this is what happened when the feds then sieged to the branch. So when they came in and totally sieged, what happened, this is what happened. Devastation. So people were looking now, okay, how much power does the government have? On to the notorious criminal trial. One of the most notorious criminal trial in America was the trial of O.J. Simpson. You probably heard about O.J. Simpson. Anyway, he was a Hall of Fame football star and a top media personality. O.J. Simpson lived 1947 to 2023, and he was tried for murdering his former wife and her friend. The trial became a public sensation as many television networks, of course, devoted hours of coverage and analysis of the trials. After Simpson's lawyers convinced the jury that the accusation they felt was racially motivated, he was found not guilty of any crime. The decision left Americans sharply divided, many believing the prosecution had botched the case. This trial gave rise to a reality television show and 24-hour news cycles going on. It further increased attention on race relations and on the police, money, and domestic violence in the country, in the criminal justice system. So thinking, you know what, are these trials that going through, are they just, And so anyway, a notorious criminal trial, murder trial. Here's O.J. Simpson, here's his wife Nicole Simpson and Ron Goldman. He ended up murdering them. In the midst, he was declared not guilty. Domestic terrorism during this time. In the 1990s, terrorist attacks became very common, I'd say increasingly common. So February 26, 1993, Muslim terrorists planted a bomb at the World Trade Center in New York City. This is 1993. We're not talking about 9/11 yet, but in 1993. The powerful blast ripped through an underground parking garage, killing 6 people and injuring over 1,000 people got injured. 6 Muslim terrorists were convicted of the crime. So here's what happened. Basically, a group of terrorists with Al Qaeda parked a yellow rental van in the basement of the World Trade Center. It contained 1,500 pounds of urea nitrate, a bomb. So the bomb detonated at 12:18 p.m. on February 26, 1993. So here we have pictures of the devastation of the World Trade Center. Here we have the Al Qaeda here. All of these guys, these Muslim terrorists, 6 Muslim terrorists that were convicted of the crime. So this is just the beginning. Oklahoma City bombing on April 19th, 1995. A bomb exploded outside a federal building in downtown Oklahoma City, killing, oh my goodness, 168 people and injuring 608 people. This is one of the largest domestic terrorists ever in the history of the United States, killing 168 people. The ages ranged from 6-month-old to 73-year-old and 3 pregnant women. When you think of that, there was a daycare in there, a little daycare, and a lot of children were killed during this bombing. So an investigation led to the arrest and conviction and execution, he was executed, of a 27-year-old Timothy McVeigh. Here's a picture of Timothy McVeigh, the homegrown terrorist. So he put up this bomb here. Here's Oklahoma City, blew up. Here we have actually this little girl, I think this little baby survived. You have a fireman there, saving a child, so there were a lot of just very innocent people in this bombing. Again, 168 people were killed and 608 people injured in Oklahoma City. Still going through 1990s. And then, of course, we have the Unabomber. I don't know if you heard about him. But in 1995, the Unabomber demanded that the newspaper publish his manifestos. So the FBI and the attorney Janet Reno at that time decided that it be published for safety reasons to publish it. So they did. So the break in the case came when the Unabomber's brother told the authorities that the manifesto sounded similar to his brother's letters. So after tracking him down in Montana, Ted Kaczynski, I think that's how you pronounce his name, was arrested and sentenced to multiple life sentence in prison. Ted Kaczynski, I think it's called Kaczynski, that's how you pronounce it. I always just call him as a Unabomber. But the thing about the Unabomber, it would be in the newspaper, and what he would print, and everybody would be like, oh, the Unabomber. But what he would do, he would in the mail, he would mail these, packages to people with electronic switches in the packages and mixed chemicals. So when you'd open your mail, a bomb would go off. That's what they called them, the Unabomber. So everybody was like, don't open your mail. You know, you could imagine. So it was a crazy time. So a Unabomber. Terrorist attacks on Americans abroad, Osama bin Laden and Al-Qaeda. So now we're going we're going to get into the foreign relations, but there were basically Americans being attacked outside of the United States as they traveled and lived in different areas. So on June 25th, 1996, Muslim terrorists struck in Saudi Arabia with a bomb planted in a fuel truck exploding outside an apartment complex in Dhahran, killing 19 servicemen and wounding hundreds more. So 19 servicemen and hundreds. This is in Saudi Arabia. In 1998, that's 1996, in 1998, over 200 lives were lost in 2 explosions which destroyed the American embassies in Tanzania and Kenya. So these explosions happened simultaneously at the same time. So they were planned. At the same time, an embassy went off with a bomb in Tanzania and one in Kenya. So you know that they were planned. These terrorist attacks were recognized as the work of Osama bin Laden. Here's a picture of him here. He lived 1957 to 2011. And his radical Islamic terrorist network called Al-Qaeda. Here's Al-Qaeda, how you spell it, Al-Qaeda. The United States retaliated with airstrikes against Afghanistan and Sudan, where a lot of these terrorists were hanging out, right? The countries known as Afghanistan and Sudan were sheltering the Al-Qaeda. In October 2000, Al-Qaeda attacked the American destroyer USS Cole while it was at port in Yemen, killing 17 American soldiers. So we have Dhahran here in Saudi Arabia. Here's Saudi Arabia. Here's where it was attacked. That attack killing 19 servicemen and injuring tons more. And down here we have this Cole, USS Cole, destroyer, military Navy, just in the Navy, that was attacked with a bomb and killed 17. So here's a picture. Here's Osama bin Laden and Al-Qaeda. Foreign policies and international agreements. I think I'll stop there because we're going to get into a lot of different foreign policies and I don't have enough time on this, so let's do this on another video. It's going to go over all the foreign policies. And during the Clinton administration, there was a lot of foreign policies.